I started out as a coach and I wasn't quite sure what to do. I had the coaching sheets. I started getting clients. We were doing the coaching through St. Vincent's. And I found myself wondering, how do I keep track of this, especially as the numbers of coachees started to grow exponentially. And so I started putting some things in place in addition to the coaching sheets. And so that is one of the reasons why we were prompted to offer this particular seminar. So that you know who I am, I'm Sharon Bogusz, and I am the Pastoral Associate at St. Vincent Basilica Parish in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, the home of the Pittsburgh Steelers, their training camp at least. And some of you may not like that, but we're really proud of it. They have a long tradition there. I thought that what we could do is begin with a prayer. O God of all goodness, we praise and we thank you for the gift of our life in you and our call to be the best version and you, the uniquely designed person that you've created us to be. Help us as we grow as coaches in our work of accompaniment with our fellow travelers. Let this be a time for us to learn from one another and to continue to give glory to you through our work. And we ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. One of the first things that I think is important for us to do, and we've just done it together now, and it goes without saying, but sometimes we can skip over that in our coaching session, and that is really to, in our own preparation, to pray for the client. Because coaching is accompaniment. We're journeying with people as they accept and they come to discover their unique design by God. And sometimes there are little rough moments in that process where you may have even experienced this, where you took an assessment and you looked at the results and said, this isn't me, or I'm not quite sure what this is saying, or I want those talents instead, or I'm not the prophet, or I need to wrestle with a particular thing. So it's important for us to be able to, in our preparation, in our own prayer time, to pray for our clients as we begin to ready to accompany them on their journey. And with that, of course, is that when we're doing that, we know that it's not just our work as coach, but it's the work of the Holy Spirit first, as the first evangelist. And God's grace perfects human nature. And St. Thomas Aquinas told us that, and then, so it's a combination of those two things. So it's an important step not to skip as we do our coaching. One of the things that I found as I start with the coaching is, how do you get coachees? And if you're working in a parish ministry or diocesan ministry, one of the things is sometimes just to even just hand out the assessment. But as you get to know different people for the coaching, one of the things I think is really important is to develop an organizational system. So what are the steps that you need to take prior to the coaching experience? And one of the things that I found is even just, how do you go about setting appointments and reminders and emails, and how we can't over communicate. The more we open the lines of communication between our coachees and ourselves, the better. One of the things that I found, I started out with 1 or 2 coachees, but then when I started taking on larger, like a whole team or a whole class, where I offered a class on strength finders, I had 20, 30 coachees that were there, and now I need to figure out, how do I get them all scheduled? And email doesn't always work for that. And so one of the things that I discovered was I went onto the internet and Googled some schedulers, and one of the ones that I discovered was simplybookme.com, and it's has a nominal fee, but there are other ones out there as well that may help you, that the client themselves can do some self-scheduling and are able to pick their own slots, and you're able to determine what you're available for. If you're with a group of other people from your parish or your team or your diocese, you can also have a different it has options for you to have different people be the coaches and coachees so that they can have their schedules on there as well. So you can have the whole team that's part of that in that process. And I found that that was very helpful, that I could just send the link out to the coachees and they were able then to pick their time, or even, and the system actually even scheduled them and then sent a reminder to them and me even, so that I knew that it was coming up. It offers even some connection with like Outlook, and I'm still learning some of those technological ways of merging all of my calendars, but it really turned out to be a good way for the client to take control of the scheduling, versus sometimes when we are journeying with someone in this process, it can become a bit of a chase sometimes of trying to go back and forth and just getting them scheduled. So it's a practical thing, but there are online tools and they have options out there that are free too, depending on how many clients you're going to have as you're beginning to move into this coaching process. Any questions or anything about that? Any comments? You okay? All right, well, one of the other things that it's very important to help with the clients and the coachees is to communicate expectations, both what your expectations are of how they can become prepared, that they also know what is involved in the process of coaching and communicating, really just putting that out there. So it's important when we're communicating the expectation that sometimes it's important to help them understand what really a coach is. What does a coaching session look like? How much time is involved in it? What are your expectations for their preparation? But also with that is, what are the client's expectations as they are entering into the coaching relationship? What are they seeking from the relationship? What are they maybe seeking in their own life at this point? Are they at a crossroads that they find themselves searching? And so that can be one of the ways in which you can begin the conversation. But also in going back to, how can the client prepare? And that is something I don't think we spent a lot of time on in our coaching training, but really giving them, once they've taken the assessments, and asking them to pray with the results, to read through them carefully. And a little technique that I picked up from my coach was that as they read the description, to highlight. So it was like yellow light, green light, red light, stop kind of thing. So using a green highlighter, as they read the description, if a statement resonated with them, I told them to highlight it in green. If it didn't resonate with them, I said maybe pick orange or something, because that might be a spot where we can talk a little bit about why that maybe was uncomfortable for them, or they didn't like the language. And yellow is like, well, when they didn't feel one way or the other about it, and it was we were kind of neutral about it. It gave us a starting point of being able to go through the coaching process and zero in on those ways in which they really feel that this assessment maybe shines light and gives them a language for who they are and the ways in which they behave and their needs and motivations. But it also gives the coach an opportunity to be able to see where they may be wrestling with the description. The descriptions we're not bound by them by themselves, but they are a starting point for us to be able to guide the coachee through the process. So being able to ask them to be able to do that homework in advance of the session is very helpful. I found too that a coaching session could be, you can go through all of the talents and the APEST results in 1 or 2 sessions, but it depends on how long it takes with each coachee. So coming from an RCIA background myself, and the idea that it takes as long as it takes, I found that there were some folks that we were able to go through like their top 5 strength finders and their APEST in 1 or 2 sessions. And then there are others that for every for every strength, we spent a whole hour. And that's that varies from group to group, and in how you work with your clients on that. In my case, they were parishioners, and so it was part of my job to really spend an extra amount of time with them to help them to discover really and accept what their talents are, their unique design that God has given them. Okay, just give me a second here. And so communicating expectations. Also, in preparation, sometimes I know that in a rush, we can go into a coaching session sometimes a little bit cold. And it's important for us not really to do that, so that once we get, say, the top 5 of the client's strengths and their APES results, to really ourselves in preparation before the session, to read through those descriptions again. And the more and more we do that, and the more people that we coach, the better we're able to commit that to heart. But it's important for us to be familiar with those descriptions again, and not going cold into a coaching session. Now, I admit that sometimes that still happens because life is can be a little bit crazy at times. But it's good to be able to just take some time to be able to review that in advance and read through those. And particularly too, in reviewing like the Strength Finders ones, reviewing also the 4 domains in which they are, because that can help to help the client to be able to see where the offer further insight into their talents and maybe even what domains they find themselves in. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on. Here's something that we went over a little bit in our coaching training, and that was note-taking. Because we have the coaching sheets, they're very helpful, and we're jotting down specific information. It's really good to take notes. Depending on the degree to which you are engaged in coaching, whether it's as a human resource director or an office director, if it's in a parish setting, it might be a little bit less, but if you're going to have multiple sessions with someone, it's important to jot down some notes, but to also let them know that you're doing that and why you're doing that, and be prepared to make that available to them if they so choose and they want to see what's there. I found it provides, it improves the continuity between sessions, especially as you continue to expand the number of people that you coach. They start to blend together a little bit sometimes. And so you want to make sure that you are able to catch certain things, especially if there's a concern or a desire that that the client has, or an issue that they might be wrestling with, or a particular even descriptor of the talents that they might be really wrestling with. And it also sometimes I will, if I do multiple sessions with someone, I'll give a little bit of homework, and it's good to write that down and say, well, you might want to work on this. So it's not really spiritual direction, but to help them explore further a particular talent or APES theme. It provides a record for the coach, and again, sometimes the client, if they don't remember something very clearly, that you can go back and say, well, you know, when you said this. Now, there are some legalities in that, and I'm not a lawyer. I know that depending on the formal nature of your coaching session, if it is in a human resources capacity or as a supervisor of some sort, you will want to keep that record for a period of time too. But you would want to check with your legal offices and see what might be involved in that. I don't want to overstate that, because most of us are in parish context or in more informal settings for the coaching, and we're seeing this as an accompaniment, but others may branch out into other arenas with it, and it's an important thing to keep into consideration and find out the answers for that, particularly in like a human resource situation. The record should be concise, relevant, and non-judgmental. We went over this in the coaching training, and that is that sometimes we can project our own thoughts on the person and what maybe we think they're trying to say. It's important for us to listen, and the notes that we take be concise, be relevant, and be non-judgmental. And we need to store those in a secure place. That's important too. And again, you're going to need to gauge the formality and the informality of your coaching relationship. But these are just some considerations and some organizational steps that can help you to make the best of the coaching relationship. Follow-up. It's important, and I'm not always great about this because communication is not one of my high strengths. It's in the middle somewhere, so it's in there a little bit. But it's important to follow up with the coachee too. I find that just an email, shooting an email is a good kind of follow-up with that, especially if you plan to continue the relationship and coaching. And even if the coaching relationship has ended because you've completed it, it can't hurt to still follow up maybe a couple weeks later with the coachee to see if there are any other concerns or insights that they may have gained as